Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mind for Life podcast. I'm Dr. Jeff Bogaczyk. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what I am calling the Persuasion playbook. Persuasion is everything. You have to persuade people, and you do that throughout your life. Today, I want to talk about 5 tactics or strategies that you can use to persuade people, to change people's minds without being pushy. By the way, this podcast is sponsored by Charm XP. It's a communication app that helps you practice these types of conversations in real time. If you'd like to get access, you can just click the link in the show notes. So 5 things that I want to really focus on, because if you've ever tried to convince someone, persuade someone. Listen, it doesn't matter what it is. We are always persuading someone. We have our own ideas, thoughts, and agendas. Other people have their own ideas, thoughts, and agendas, and those things oftentimes come in conflict. And we try to persuade people, and they also try to persuade us. That's rhetoric. It is the art of persuasion. And the misconception is that people think that we should push harder. When we don't get our way, we should push harder. We should pressure. And that is not what I would say the best means of persuasion. Just pushing harder and just putting pressure on someone may get them to come into compliance or agree with you for now. But as soon as they leave or walk away or go home or take a nap and wake up the next day, they don't agree with you, and they are back to their perspective. And so real persuasion is subtle, it is relational, it is psychology-based. You see it all the time in advertisements. You think you are not being persuaded or that you are immune to the art of persuasion when it comes to advertising, but yet you go and buy certain products and you think you are making your own choice about what you're going to buy, but I hate to tell you, you have been persuaded. You have bought into the narrative that goes along with that product. You have identified, and they have told you the story that you want to hear that enables you to buy their product. Be it Nike, be it outdoor gear, be it a beauty product, be it toothpaste, whatever it is, there is a need deep inside of you that needs to be fulfilled, and that company, that brand, that advertisement tapped into that need, that desire that you have, and positioned that need with their product and persuaded you to purchase it. And so we think that we're immune to it. We think that we are immune to propaganda. Propaganda, of course, is also persuasion, but we are all affected by it. And guess what? It's hard to get outside of it because we are immersed in a world that is completely overrun with rhetoric, communication, messages, stories, advertisements, propaganda, whatever it is. It's all encompassing, and we just live in that environment. So how do we use that to our end? This episode giving you 5 strategies that I would say are research backed, that anyone can use and use in a way without being manipulative. There are ways that you can persuade, and then there are other ways that you can manipulate people. And so sometimes it's very difficult to understand the difference and to say the difference. So what is persuasion? Persuasion is nothing more than influencing other people's beliefs or behaviors through your communication. Now, we need to remember that communication is more than just the words that we speak. It is the tone of voice. It is the nonverbals. It is our gestures. It is our body language. It is the pace of our language. It is whether we are loud or whether we are soft. Communication encompasses a whole lot more than just the words. The traditional breakdown is that of the message that you give in any communication, only 7% of it is the actual words that you speak. The rest, 93%, and I don't know how they break this down, but this is what's kind of bandied around, if I can say, as the breakdown. The rest of it is nonverbal, tone of voice, body language, facial expressions, all of that goes into a communication message. So persuasion is influencing other people's beliefs or behaviors through your communication. In fact, Aristotle said that rhetoric was the most available means of persuasion in any situation. So rhetoric is the art and science of persuasion as I define it. But it is using whatever means of persuasion is available. A lot of times we think rhetoric is nothing more than words, and it often gets put into the conversation when it comes to politics. Don't be using that divisive rhetoric. Well, what does that mean? That means you are using a type of communication that is tending to divide or position or posture people into different camps. So persuasion is how you communicate, influencing other people through your communication. Leaders use persuasion. Husbands and wives use persuasion. Moms and dads use persuasion. Children use persuasion. Friends use persuasion. We all use persuasion throughout our lives and everything we do. When you're at work, you are using persuasion. Other people are using persuasion to get you to do things, to ask. Sometimes, what is an available means of persuasion? I'm going to give you more money. That's an incentive, and that can persuade you. That can influence you. So, utilizing persuasion, connection, timing, framing. Think of persuasion as guiding people along, not dragging someone or forcing someone to your side. And so I'm going to give you Aristotle's basic 3 modes of persuasion that he talks about. When you talk about rhetoric or the art and science of persuasion, there are 3 traditional means of that. Number 1 is what we would call logos. Logos, the Greek word, means reason. And that is what we typically associate with a logical argument. This is where we use facts. This is where we use statistics. This is where we use tactics of argument, premises, and all of those things, syllogisms, all of those things that we use to logically convince someone that what we are saying is true, is the case, and why it should be believed above something else. They use these things all the time. If you watch talking heads on TV regarding news and, well, how's the economy doing? Well, let me just give you the statistics on gross domestic product. Let me give you the statistics on inflation. Let me give you this statistics on consumer pricing. And they give you all of those things. That's a logical, a logos-focused means of persuasion. Number 2 is ethos. Ethos is the credibility of the person that is speaking. A person that has high levels of credibility is a person that we tend to believe. That's why they will say things like 4 out of 5 dentists surveyed when they're talking about how something will work for your teeth. A dentist is often considered an expert, and expertise has ebbed and flowed in different areas throughout history. Certain people at times were considered experts, authoritative, if we can say that. And in ancient days, the priests or the priestly caste or religious leaders were considered authoritative when speaking about certain subjects. Economists, especially ones that graduated from high-level educational institutions, were considered experts when talking about the economy, but those things change and a person's credibility can be compromised by scandal. This is the reason why politicians will tout their expertise, will tout their resume, will tout their experience to convince you that they are an expert, and why the opposing sides will try to dig up dirt on them to undermine their credibility. If we didn't believe in ethos, if we didn't believe in credibility, there would be no negative ads. But people go negative for one reason: to damage the credibility of the opponent, to convince you that no, they are not an expert, no, they are not a good person, no, their ethos, that is the fact that you can trust what they have to say, we're going to damage that. And then the third one is Pathos, it's where we get the term pathetic from. It has to do with emotions. It has the appeal to emotions, and this is where you have emotional stories. People will use pathos to manipulate you, to tell you a sad story. You've seen the commercials where there's abused dogs and a really melancholy song playing in the background to convince you to give money to the organization. That is an appeal to your emotions. So there are three appeals. There is the appeal to logic and reason. There is the appeal to the credibility of the speaker. And then there is the appeal to emotion. And all three of those are part of what we would call classical rhetorical theory. Ethos, logos, pathos. Now, and you can use each one of those. If you're trying to convince someone of something, you should use those. Why should I believe you? Well, here are the facts. Why should I believe you? Well, here's why I'm an expert. And I'm not, one of the things that has really, I think, unfortunately leveled up the credibility of people who have no credibility is just social media and followers. If somebody has a lot of followers on social media, automatically they are elevated up as somebody important. Why? Because there's a lot of people that follow them. So they must be important. They must be authoritative. When in fact, who knows what their credibility is or what their knowledge is or what their expertise is on whatever subject it is. It's just that a lot of people are listening to them. And I guess that's a metric in and of itself. And so then there's that and the appeal to emotion. So those are three aspects that you should understand when you're talking about persuasion. But let me give you 5 tools that I think you can start using today. Number 1 is reciprocity. Reciprocity is a human nature principle whereby people feel an obligation to reciprocate, to give back for something that you have given to them. They feel an obligation to return favors. No one likes to be held hostage to someone else who did them something good. There is a funny episode of The Office, if you've ever seen it, where Dwight and I think Andy continue to do good things for each other throughout the day and throughout the episode, and neither one of them wants to be obligated to the other person. If you do something good to me, I'm going to do something good back to you. If you do a favor for me, I'm going to do a favor back. Well, that's a principle of reciprocity, and you can use that in a manipulative way, but you can also use that in a way that you can do that with integrity by giving first to someone else, by giving without the expectation of something in return, by giving a compliment, and so people are more amenable to be persuaded when they like you, when you do something good for them, when you are kind to them. They have a tendency to more likely be persuaded. So giving a compliment before asking a favor, being kind and generous to someone. And it works the best when it is unsuspected, and it works the best when it is sincere. And you need to understand that sincerity and that authenticity is important, because people can usually smell a fake. And if you come out of the blue and say something nice to someone, what do? We get suspicious. Why are they being so nice to me? What do they want from me? And so people tend to be that way. Now, where I think people can get in trouble is when they are naive and when con men come in and use this principle of reciprocity to con people out of things. They will say nice things and they will compliment them and they will pretend to be somebody they're not and use reciprocity in order to obligate them. You got to be careful about this when you are in sales, where people say, well, I'm going to throw in extra mats, or I'm going to throw in this deal. I'm going to throw in this because then you feel like, oh my goodness, they're throwing in, now I have to buy the car. or whatever. And so salespeople use this all the time, and you just need to, number one, be aware of it, but then understand how it works and how you could potentially use it to persuade someone else. Number two is social proof. And these two come out of the book by Robert Cialdini. I believe it's called Influence. It may even be on the shelf behind me. But these are the things that, these are the ways in which people are influenced. These are the persuasion. Influence and persuasion. These are the ways in which people are persuaded. They're persuaded by reciprocity. And number two, they're persuaded by social proof. People follow the crowd. And if they look around and think that everyone is doing this, they want to be a part of it. That is that FOMO, fear of missing out. No one wants to be left behind. And there's a peer pressure that pushes people in certain ways to do things because that's what everyone is doing. And social proof is a powerful tool that people use to persuade. That is an appeal to ethos. What does social proof say? When other people think that you're somebody, you're somebody. And this is the exact formula for social media influencers. I've got X amount of followers, so I'm important. And if people go, well, they have a lot of followers, so they must be important. That's that social proof aspect of it. This is why people will say, as seen on the Wall Street Journal or Forbes.com, and they will put those things up on their webpage or in their bio to do what? To prove to others that they are important, to prove to others that they are an authoritative voice. That's why people will say, I've written X amount of books, or why I have this podcast is in the top 10, not mine, but my podcast is here, or my book is here, or I have X amount of followers. All of those things are what? An attempt to prove to you that I'm authoritative or that I'm important, right? I have X amount of degrees, or I've been recognized by this association, or I've been given these awards. Social proof is that aspect. And one of the typical responses people will use is, well, everybody thinks this. Everybody thinks this. Everybody thinks that this is the best path. Most of our team believes this is the best path. When you go, oh, well, when you use that phrase in a meeting and you're trying to persuade people to adopt your project, policy, or plan, you say, well, the boss thinks this is a good idea, or, well, XYZ person who's really important thinks this is a good idea. People then go, oh, well, if they think it's important. And you are, what you could say is, attributing to the expertise of the other person. This is a logical fallacy where you are appealing to the authority. That, of course, it's logically incoherent, but appeal to authority is a means of persuasion, because people, when they hear that an authority figure likes that, then they like that as well, or they think that it's important. This is why people will pay money to be the official car brand of the NBA or the NFL, and they are trying to latch on to the authority of those companies. Well, if the NFL likes it, it must be good for me because I like the NFL. So social proof. But to have integrity in this, you can't just lie about it, which a lot of people do. They lie about, oh, this, that, and the other thing. This person, this person, this person. Well, they're name droppers, and it may or may not be true. So have integrity with what you do. Number 3 is what is called the contrast principle. People often evaluate things in comparison to other things. They don't make logical decisions. You don't make logical decisions. I don't make logical decisions. We often look at a variety of things and then make value judgments. What is more important? What is better? If this one's better than that one, I'm going to get it. which is why advertisers who are trying to persuade you will contrast their product with the other product. You've often seen these commercials. Our brand, the other brand. Of course, they can't put the name on there, but they'll have the same colors and the schematics will look the same, and they will then contrast theirs. And then one of the typical ways they contrast is with quality. One of the typical ways they contrast is with price point. So they will contrast theirs with yours. They will frame their messaging. And so they will frame it and contrast it with one that they know is an inferior product and not look at the other ones. Or if they go, well, how can we contrast with the superior products to ours? Well, that's more expensive. That's way out of your range. If you're looking for luxury and you're going to spend millions of dollars, here you go. But if you're looking for something that's going to be great and going to be better than everybody else, here's ours. That contrast principle is often used when it comes to small, medium, and large. When it comes to sizes, they will use small, medium, and large to contrast value. Small is here, and the difference between medium and large is 5 cents when it comes to a French fry or something like that. And so people go, it's just not worth it. I'm going to get more for 5 cents. I'm going to do it. They don't really want to sell medium. They ultimately want to sell large and get more money because 5 cents times 1 million sales is a lot of money. But they use the principle of contrasting things. And so this works well in negotiations. This works well in decision making to position and to frame your perspective, your offer, whatever it may be, in contrast to other ones. We do it all the time because people are making value-based decisions and they don't make decisions just in isolation. Number 4 is mirroring. This is where you mirror or reflect back the emotions. And this is really about relating to the other person. And the FBI negotiator, very famous Chris Voss, he will talk about mirroring. And the job of a negotiator is to do what? To persuade the guy holding the hostages or whatever to come over to our side and to resolve the issue without a mass traumatic event. And so what do? They will relate. They will mirror. They will persuade and convince the other person that, hey, man, I'm just like you. And so you can mirror by using a few key tactics. Number 1 would be reflecting back somebody's emotions. It sounds like you are feeling overwhelmed and frustrated with this. I understand that. It sounds like you're feeling this. And when you mirror that back, what does it do? Number 1, it shows empathy. I can relate to you. I can relate to you. I have an empathy. Number 2, it builds trust. Because I can relate to you, because I understand where you're coming from, now you have a greater tendency to trust me, right? This is also an appeal, if you will, to number 1 would be an appeal to the emotions in that sense that, yeah, I am identifying with your emotional state and recognizing that your emotional state is valid. But it is also an appeal to the credibility of me because the ethos, because I can relate to you. I'm a more credible and trustworthy individual because I understand what you're going through. You can trust me because I know what you're dealing with. And so the ultimate goal of that is it opens up people to be more amenable to what you are trying to persuade them to do. And so you can use this in conflict situations where you're trying to de-escalate a situation. You mirror back somebody's emotions. You mirror back their frustrations. You can mirror back their body language. I understand what you're going through. It sounds like you're feeling frustrated. It sounds like you're really angry about this. I've been through a similar situation. I understand. That opens up the opportunity for that person to be persuaded because now they have a greater trust in you. And finally, the 5th one is storytelling. This is an appeal to pathos. We are persuaded by stories. we are persuaded by narratives. We identify with narratives and stories. If we didn't, there wouldn't be books, there wouldn't be movies, there wouldn't be songs that all tell stories. Our storytelling is as old as time, and it works because we identify ourselves with the characters in those stories. We identify ourselves with the plot lines. We identify ourselves with the narrative arcs in those stories. And so using stories rather than facts. Facts, of course, the appeal to reason and logos does work, and it is valuable, and people do it, but the appeal to emotion is more powerful, and depending on your context and what you're trying to do, people will try to take themselves out of emotional decisions when it is business negotiations or things like that, but ultimately everyone is susceptible to emotional appeals. Rather than argue facts about things, tell a story. Talk about your point of view. I used to think that too until I had this experience. Let me tell you what changed my mind. And you give the story, and the other person identifies with the story. This sometimes will bypass their defensiveness because it is engaging an emotion and it is causing them to relate to you. So to be able to practice stories and to utilize narrative in a way to connect with the other person, to appeal to their emotional states, their desires, the deepest needs that they have as a human being, is a very, very powerful use of persuasion. So how can you use these tools ethically? Remember this, persuasion is a skill. It's not a weapon. You can ask yourself this question, is what I'm doing in the best interest of the other person as well? Now, we have our own agendas, and we've got to be careful. Those morals are very subjective in the sense that not necessarily they're right or wrong, but depending upon who is speaking or who is persuading, they may have different. We have to recognize we have our own agendas, and we can sometimes mistake a collaborative for our own selfish ambition. And so persuasion works the best when people don't feel tricked or manipulated into it. And the people who are really good at it can manipulate you by convincing you that you are not being tricked or manipulated into it. So just a quick recap. 5 tools you can use today to start persuading. Principles that you can use today to persuade people. The principle of reciprocity, whereby you do something for someone and they in turn are obligated to do something back to you. Number 2 is social proof. This is the appeal to your own credibility by showing other people why you are authoritative, why you should be trusted, why you have a voice in whatever it is, and why you should be believed. Number 3 is the contrast principle, where you are contrasting your product, your offer with another one that's inferior in some way. Number 4 is mirroring, and that is where you are reflecting back somebody else's emotions and feelings in a way to be relatable to them, so that they trust you, so that they can realize they know where you're coming from, that you know where they're coming from. And the last is storytelling, the appeal to emotions with powerful narratives. So if you have any need to persuade people, and guess what? You do. You do, because we all persuade people all day, every day. And quite honestly, we are trying to persuade ourselves. This is called motivation. This is called ambition, right? We persuade ourselves to do things, to not do things. We try to persuade ourselves what's good to eat, what's not good to eat. And so you can try utilizing these tactics on yourself as well. I hope that's been helpful for you. If it has been helpful for you, or if you know somebody who it would be helpful for, please consider sharing it with them. And thanks so much for watching. Tune in next time.